and this is My Slovak Experience.
Hey, thank you for being here. I am always grateful to you and for the time that you take to discover a new Slovak experience. And today's such experience comes from Mongolia, where Billy was born and lived for a long time before coming to study in Europe and entering Slovakia in 1998. So it's 20 years ago, and I recognize that Slovakia was probably a quite different world than today. And Billy takes us there since the first rough 90s. He's also a linguist, so we spoke about Slovak, about Mongolian, we talk about food and how to get Slovak citizenship, we talk about many things, and I think it's just time to listen, right? So please welcome to Billy Altansukh. I'm here with Billy Altansukh, right?
That's correct.
Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Lela. Really pleasure to be here.
So, Billy, actually, I'm not sure. I would like to know. Actually, is Billy your real name, or is just the Western name? And how is your name really?
Yeah. It is my Western name, and it is at the same time a real name that I'm using here because I've got two citizenships. An interesting story. When I got my Slovak citizenship, I had an option or opportunity to change the name so that it's more easy to pronounce and easy to advance my relationship networking and career generally. My original Mongolian name, which still I have it in my Mongolian passport, in all my Mongolian documents, is Billy Altansukh.
So there is still some part of Billy then.
Correct. Yeah. My friends called me Billy already from early childhood. So it's almost like a dream come true that your nickname becomes your real name. So it happened when I got the citizenship here.
And your full name, like from surname in Mongolian, how does it sound?
Billy Altansukh.
Okay, cool. So you are from Mongolia, right?
Correct. Yeah, I am from Mongolia.
But you are living in Slovakia
for a very long time.
How did it happen?
Well, you always say it's like chercher la femme, right? Always look for a woman in the background. And many my friends, foreigners in Slovakia, one of the reasons they actually ended up in Slovakia was exactly the girl, the wife, and the partner. Mm-hmm. And it's same for me. I actually met my wife in Germany. I actually came to Germany to study. And there I met my wife, and she's Slovak. Mm-hmm. So we started our relationship in 1997. So it's like over 21 years, of which we are married for around 18 years. Okay. So we decided to live in Slovakia after I finished university.
And so your journey started 21 years ago in Mongolia to Germany,
or even earlier, because I arrived to Germany in 1995. Okay. So it was first time actually I went there without any knowledge of the language, but I could speak English, I could speak Russian, which we learned in all those post-socialist countries, as you know. Mm-hmm. We had at school Russian from the first grade, and it helped a lot in my adaptation to Slovak language. Generally, I'm interested in languages, which I speak 6 of them. So I decided to go to Germany to study because this is an attractive and interesting language. In addition, the costs for study were almost like close to zero, right? You just needed to make sure you live, you have something for living, but the university was for free once you've been admitted and accepted. So they accepted my application. I went there in 1995. I had to go through a special college for foreign students who need to be prepared for German university because you cannot study at university with tourist language, right? Okay. So that's why one year we spent a very intensive.
So this is in German.
That was in Germany.
Able to,
exactly. Yeah. So that's the reason why I was in Europe. then I met my current wife.
Yeah.
That time my girlfriend. And
when you went to Slovakia the first time many years ago, what were your impressions?
1998 I came first time here, and I can tell you the country has really changed since then. I think it was a very isolated country, to be honest. When I arrived here, things were not working properly as it would. So there was a clear difference when I saw it to Eastern Germany, because that's the part where I was studying, and it was like developing like hell. West Germany was investing a lot of money, so after reunification, many things were happening there. But Slovakia was a kind of isolated, and there was because of politics, right? They had a prime minister who didn't want to get closer to Europe. Yeah, so it's.
So that was the time you came in.
Yeah, that was the time. So you cannot imagine, like the prices, the variety of things you could buy as well. So it was all in the beginning, and it's even the Slovaks, they call it the rough 90s, right?
Yeah.
So it was a rough time. Crime and everything was still pretty high, but it started to change after that.
And why did you choose then, if that was such an awful time to stay in Slovakia?
When you're in love, right, you tend to love not just the person, but the country the person is coming from. So I actually, after the initial kind of surprise I've experienced, then I started to see the beautiful parts of Slovakia, right? The way how people interact, how they appreciate when you start speaking Slovak to them. And actually, I'm into languages. I studied languages. That's why, for me, it was a kind of natural way of connecting to the culture through the language.
So was the first Slavic language for you?
No, the first Slavic was Russian, as I mentioned.
Okay, so in Mongolia you already spoke Russian,
Correct.
Then you spoke German when you went to Germany, and then you met Slovak.
Yeah, and I also spoke English already from the 4th grade at
Which
school.
one is the 6th then? I miss one.
Czech.
Czech.
Czech, Mongolian. Because if you speak, regarding the Czech, it was also funny because when I arrived here, media and everything was very much Czech language based. And you could actually see many movies and TV series all produced in Czech or by Czech television. So more or less you were bombarded by the Czech language when you were watching Slovak TV very often. But that changed with the time. Now they have everything in Slovak language.
Yeah. But I'm still surprised when I have the occasion to have with meetings with some friends or members of my family, and there are like Slovaks and Czechs, and they just both speak their own language. But okay, fine, they just understand it. It would if Italians and Spanish would just stay there and speak one Spanish and one Italian, and they wouldn't actually understand each other so much. I don't think.
No, I think it's much closer than Italian and Spanish. So Czech and Slovak, it's very close. So if you learn one of them, you actually have no problem to understand.
So then you can fluently understand Czech as well.
Yeah, exactly. So from understanding perspective, it opens you doors to many other languages as well, right? So
how is the Mongolian? How do you say, I don't know, welcome to My Slovak Experience podcast in Mongolian?
Манай энэ Словакт амьдрах амьдралын тухай ярилцлаганд тавтай морилно.
It sounds a bit like Chinese as well. So
no, not at all.
Not
at all. I think we call it the throat vowels. You don't have that many in Chinese, so it's different. Definitely different. It's a different language family. Has nothing to do with Russians in the north, which we neighbor with, and it has nothing to do with Chinese, which is our southern neighbor. So it's independent.
So is there any word common with Slovak?
No, even with Slovak, no.
Not one single word, like restaurant.
No, but actually we have so many common words with Hungarian.
Okay.
Because Hungarian language kind of related to Mongolian branch, right? So that's the reason why Slovaks don't understand Hungarians, because it's totally unrelatable language, right? You cannot utilize your Slavic knowledge to understand Hungarians, but some vocabulary, I think they have more. They influenced each other, so they have some words in Mongolian we don't have. We have words from China, probably taken from Chinese, but generally Chinese wouldn't understand us. We neither Chinese nor Russians we understand because we learned that, but it has nothing to do with the language background. Yeah.
And in what city did you come first when you came to Slovakia?
Bratislava.
Okay.
Yeah, Bratislava. So, and the impressions from it. You could literally see at that time when you crossed the border and you came to Slovakia, cars were different from Western country, from Germany. Infrastructures, condition was totally different. So all those things, even the brands, right? The brands, the shops, which now is actually very similar. Yeah. So if you cross the border to Austria or Czech, you wouldn't even know. As a foreigner, you wouldn't even know that you crossed the border, because you would probably find in shopping malls like same brands, same names. That time it was totally different, right? It wasn't from economical perspective. It wasn't open market yet fully. So all those brands were coming step by step. I think the first opening of Tesco was a kind of event here, and then other big multinational brands started to come and open their branches here in Slovakia. So then it started to resemble more like Austria or Germany, and now it's uncomparably different, and it's same actually, like in many areas.
And the same is also in Mongolia, if you go back?
No, it's not, because obviously you will not see the European brands.
Okay.
So it would be a mixture of Chinese brands and Russian, South Korean, actually very strong present in Mongolian market. So you can find the food or supermarket chain from South Korea operating in Mongolia. So it's not Billa that you would find there, for example. But yeah, I think development of countries goes exactly this way. So the more advanced, developed countries, at some point they enter the market, and then they actually set up their standards in the new market. So they demand the standards to be the same, and they actually help the country to raise the standards.
Yeah, that's true. It's interesting to see, for me, the packaging with the language instructions behind, right? So you see that, for example, in the Slovakia, you buy something here, you have Polish and Slovak and Czech and Hungarian and Russian and Bulgarian and so on. While if you buy it in Austria, you have Austrian, French, English, Italian, Spanish. So it's like these are the distribution, but actually this is also where the products are mostly oriented, I suppose.
Exactly.
Interesting. So if you make a comparison, right, between your home country and Slovakia, so how do you see the differences and the similarities?
Oh my God! I mean, it's two different worlds, right? Okay. It's Mongolia is Central Asian country, so a person coming from Central Asia to Europe, I mean, must see the real difference there. The same way as someone from Africa will come to Europe, and there will be significant difference in the lifestyle and many other things. And the funny thing is that when I came here, there was not internet at that time, right? It was 1995. Internet was not even. So I used to make phone calls to my home, and I almost had to take a loan from the bank. That's how expensive it was at that time. Unimaginable now, but at that time, the cheapest way was to write letters and then wait for several weeks to arrive in Mongolia. I think it was a romantic, a very good way of communication which I started to miss because now instantly anyone, your mom can just call you from any corner of Mongolia. At that time, I used to carefully select my words, carefully select my photos because you couldn't send a photo. So you actually need to take the photo, go to Fuji Center or wherever, Kodak Center, and then develop them and put it in the envelope, send via post. That were the times I experienced, and I'm not very old, but from that into the age of internet and instant access to everything, it's totally changed the perception.
Still postcards perhaps are sent nowadays, but
yeah, but
that's it.
To your family, you want to write certain experience because for Europeans they consider the rest of the world exotic, but for the rest of the world, Europe is exotic, right? Because that's what they want to go and see, and they heard about it, and every time when I was going during my study times back to Mongolia, my relatives were really like, yeah, tell us like how life is there, right? Like they were asking questions the same way you would ask anyone who arrived from Bali or Indonesia or whatever, like how is life there? What do they do? So it is an exotic place for Asians. The way how Europeans work, live, make decisions, and this is totally interesting to my people. And I was felt myself as a messenger between those two worlds.
Okay.
And I think I had the advantage that I gained from both, right? So I kept really good traits from like easygoingness from Mongolian, like not being too much concerned about the obstacles, and adaptability, flexibility. I think Mongolians are very adaptable. And then from European culture, I inherited really, I think, very good sense of detail, right? Detailed thinking, analytical thinking as well, not making decisions too fast. So I think that's what at least German culture taught me, and the German way of thinking appealed to me to the level that I believe that I actually took it. And my wife, she recognizes many of things, said, that's your German school now talking to me. Right? So
a bit of everything that makes our experience actually good. No? So a bit of culture from one place, from one other. What are the good things about the Slovak experience?
When you, as I say, when you love someone from the country, first you tend to like the country, like unconditionally. You come and say, yeah, I love everything about that country and so on. But actually, you find out that you don't know anything about the country, right? Culture, literature, and everything. So you start to find it out step by step, and you discover those beauties of language, beauty in a relationship with people. So one thing I was really very moved by was wherever we went with my wife to visit some relatives, no matter where they are, they were always giving us those homemade stuff, in the, the sterilized fruits or vegetables in a glass.
Like pickles. And,
like pickles and so on. But also fruits, right? Like apricots or cut apples or cherries, and they had it.
The famous compote.
The compotes, and it's a kind of nice tradition to give someone who is visiting you the fruit of your work, to say. It's from your garden. It's not from the supermarket. And at that time, I think you couldn't rely that much on supermarkets. So I love this way how Slovaks deal with things that they grow in their gardens, their relationship to gardening, their relationship to generally to doing things on their own. That's I admire. Like Slovak men usually try to do everything at home on their own, right? So they don't just immediately call the company to fix something. And so the attitude is, and I think it's inherited from the time of socialism, where things were not that in abundance, right? So you had to rely more on yourself than on the system. So people were building their houses on their own. You know, they had to learn everything from the scratch. So this mentality, like they can do it, is very strong. So they're not afraid of trying it, and they don't fail. Actually, many of them are very, very good. So very skilled, and that's what I feel is one of the interesting traits of Slovak nature.
Do you follow somehow the politics, the news, and information?
Oh yeah. Actually, you know, when I came here first, I had to find a job, of course, right? Because you just don't come here as a tourist and then start living from tourism, right? So what I had to find a job, and at that time, when you don't speak the language, especially, it's very difficult. And all those multinational companies were not here, so they didn't exist. It came after 2004, right?
Yeah.
When really many of them started to open different centers. But before that, I actually worked as a teacher because there was, and there is still actually lack of teachers at schools.
Teaching what?
Teaching languages.
Okay.
Right? So as I said, I studied languages. I'm a linguist. So
like any language in particular, like English?
Yeah,
or
English and German.
Okay.
English and German. But if I had Russian, I would also teach Russian for sure. But but it wasn't an option. But at that school, they were actually very pleased when I contacted them, because they had an opening vacancy. It was a private business college actually. So I started as teacher and learning all those aspects of things that I've learned in theory at the university. Because you know, studying language also means you learn how to teach the language as well. So it's actually my branch of skill or qualification. So it was not a major problem for me to get into it, and I learned a lot. And because it's college, you deal with usually teenagers, and you know how hard it is to to raise the teenagers with all the puberty starting, and you know, and the moods and everything. I learned a lot, and I was teaching like for 3 years until they actually graduated the college. So we're talking about 15 to 19 years old students. So. But it was very exhausting, right? It's really a mentally very exhausting job. So I can fully empathize with all the frustration which my former colleagues, teachers are experiencing now, and they're going on strike, and they see their job not really recognized well, right? Or rewarded very well. And I kind of agree with that. And because you have access to the school system, you immediately have access actually to all those educated people who are your colleagues, who are experts in Slovak language and literature, in history, right, in chemistry and everything. So I really enjoyed the time when I could learn from them, and they accepted me as not just a equal colleague who is teaching English, but they embraced me as a foreigner who is willing to learn how things work in Slovakia, the culture and the literature. They gave me recommendations on what to learn first, or what to read first, for example, and so on. So even from perspective of literature and music and everything, I learned within those 3 years so much that actually I cannot ignore it anymore. So you're naturally connected to all the developments in politics. You naturally follow all the things happening, even in show business, because it's and the funny thing in Slovakia is it's a small country, and Bratislava is actually a small city. So all those, we call them celebrities, right, or people who you know from the TV, the probability of meeting them somewhere in public space is very high. So you can meet someone they consider as a legend of specific sport, just having...
Yeah, you just meet, because it's Bratislava.
Because it's Bratislava.
Like, Hollywood of Slovakia, let's say, right?
So that's something that we have very common with Mongolia, by the way. So Mongolia is also a very small country with 3 million people.
But it's wide.
It's a huge country, but from the size perspective, but from population perspective, it's even smaller than Slovakia.
Okay.
So it's just 3 million.
So half of the country is in Ulaanbaatar and others are...
That's absolutely the situation right now. So the half of the population is in the capital
But
city.
you were from the capital? Or
Yeah, I was from capital city. So you meet there some people you see on TV in the public transport, right? They don't hide behind a limousine and black windows or whatever. So it's you just meet them, right? And this proximity to people who influence the country, it makes it more like connected, I would say, right? So in Slovakia, that's why in Slovakia, all those things that I follow on TV, any big, issues or political crisis or whatever happening, or maybe some findings, some investigations, you can literally link to anyone in Slovakia. Because of their relationship ties within the country. Okay?
Yeah,
It's really
there is
small.
a higher probability that if someone, I don't know, gets it's some kind of under the spotlight, this someone might be just 2 degrees of separation from any person in this country, right?
Yeah,
Or
exactly.
even 0 degrees of separation. Yeah.
So that's why it makes it very difficult. So you cannot actually start easily creating the dots between connections. So this is what is happening right now. So I said you were sitting with that suspect 2 years ago. Yeah, the probability that I was sitting with some suspects is also high, but it has nothing to do.
But
right?
this should be potentially a better situation and ecosystem for a democratic country, right? Where it's easier for me to choose whom to vote if I know the person instead of if I just hear some whatever marketing campaign on the TV or on a poster, right?
Yeah, and then here comes another character of Slovaks, which plays a very important role, is that, and I know that people, foreigners, they heard that, but it's definitely something. I don't want to make it like sound as very negative, but it's if Slovaks see someone succeeding in something, it's very difficult for them just to acknowledge it positively, saying, yeah, like cheer up and say, yeah, look at him, he did it, and so on. They're very critical. Slovaks are very critical, almost to the level of envying the success of other people, right? So this is a kind of strange trait, and which you meet very often, and that's why people say like Slovaks love complaining. They love complaining, but it doesn't mean that they immediately change things which they complained about. But the fact that they complain is well known, and the thing is how to make it a positive experience for anyone who sees a successful fellow, right? In let's say in economy. So there is immediately a suspicion that he must have gained it in a very illegal way or whatever. So where is the money coming from? And it's kind of suspicion. I think
trust issue.
Yeah,
well.
I think it's a. I don't know if it's trust issue or I think Slovaks were suspicious to anything happening around them because of the culture and the history. Actually, I can fully kind of empathize with that. All countries around them were somehow trying to control what was happening on the territory, whether it was Hungarians or Austrians or Czechs as well, right? So they were always doing something which made Slovaks not very comfortable. So the generic feeling of suspicion and not trusting, especially when they hear a foreign language or foreign person or a foreign idea, is kind of understandable from my perspective. So it's maybe very deeply rooted, but I can see now how many Slovaks they go to the world, they see how things work, they learn, they make their country and their family proud. So when they come back, it's a huge impact on the society it's creating, right? But obviously there are small villages and so on where things go a typical Slovak way, where the changes are not happening that rapidly, right? Where majority of the population is aged and probably not employed anymore. So that's a two different worlds that you see in Slovakia. And I think everyone can confirm you're seeing this difference between like Bratislava, which is dynamic center of politics, economy, trade and everything and culture. And then the rest of the country, which is still lagging behind in many areas, right?
But more than, I mean, this is my experience since I travel to go to office. Almost more than half of the country I experienced travels back to eastern Slovakia from Bratislava on Friday for the weekend, right? There is always this kind of migration back and forth.
I enjoy weekend in Bratislava, you know,
Yeah.
because it's really empty. It's really empty. So
But that means that, you know, part of this kind of modern or cosmopolitan impact might go back to, you know, the villages.
yeah. You know what? I see where the impact is happening is they demand more, right? They want certain services. So they are not happy with the low service level of the countryside anymore. So if the countryside wants to sell the services and sell it to majority of people who can buy it, and those people usually are workforces from Bratislava or major cities like Košice and so on, they need to raise the level of the service they're providing because it's demanded by the customers, right? Yeah. So I think Slovaks became more and more demanding on the quality. So you can see it also on those issues which happened here in Slovak supermarkets, where they found out that the same product which was sold here and in Western Europe, or just crossed the border, like 50 kilometers away from here in a supermarket in Austria, the same product had different quality. So I think Slovaks started to demand the same quality for Slovaks as it is for Western Europe.
Because many buy it, particularly here in Bratislava, it's quite easy to go for shopping right into any nearby. Probably Austria, this is the majority of place, but somebody maybe goes to Hungary, right?
Yeah.
So this is basically where you can see the.
So I think it's the opening, crossing the border. Is a funny story about that because I experienced Slovakia when the borders were functioning. So Slovakia was not a member of EU, and it was not a member of the Schengen area. So I experienced the times where I had to go to Vienna, and I really need to apply for visa to get to Vienna. Can you imagine that?
Also because you were not a member of European Union, right?
Oh yeah, that's the primary reason, because I was still considered as a third country citizen here in Slovakia, but not as a Slovak citizen. So I was still Mongolian citizen with permanent residence in Slovakia.
Are you now Slovak? Are you now Slovak in the citizenship, or?
Now I am, yeah, I am. As I say, I have both citizenships.
How was taking the Slovak citizenship?
They made it a bit harder, actually, because you need to pass a language test, which scares many foreigners because not everyone is linguists.
And how hard is this test?
For the one who didn't study languages and who is not really very much into languages, it can be hard. It can be one of the reasons why they would deny to give you citizenship.
So you have like a conversation?
You have a conversation. You need to write they give you a text. You read the text, and then they take away the text, and you need to replicate the text in your own words, right? So, and then they have a conversation with you. Like they ask questions in Slovak, so you need to know. And those questions are not about like which bread you like. It's more about what kind of political systems in Slovakia. Yeah, do you know who is the president of Slovakia? Right. So all those citizenship related things, which I actually approve it. I think it's a right way to do the testing, because if you are a citizen, it's not only the fact that you live in the country, but also the fact that you are going to participate in the country's life.
The political decisions as well. Yeah.
So I started to more and more realize that I'm not a tourist anymore, right? After some point, I was like kind of blind to this reality of I actually immigrated. Yeah, I immigrated to Slovakia, and it took many years until I realized this fact. Because for me it was like still, I'm like in a foreign country. There is a still probability. Yeah, I'm a tourist, a student, temporary in Europe. So I will go back someday. But then you start family, you have child, and you start realizing actually that's your life now, right? So you are going to live in the country, and at some point you have to admit you are an immigrant, right? Who came from another country and who lives here. And if you get this understanding, then you really start to manage your life accordingly. So it means you start thinking like, okay, so what if I decide to live here? What is going to impact my life? Language, for sure. Is the knowledge of political system is going to impact? Maybe not everyone, right? But for example, if you're making trade, then you need to understand how the trade works, what the laws are. Yeah. So I think that different foreigners coming here, they start from different corners, right? Their integration into the society. But at the end of the day, all of them need to know something about the cultural life of Slovak, the language. It would be awesome to know history of the country, because you kind of connect it and you actually understand why Slovaks very often behave the way they behave, right? Because it's historically influenced fact. And why is it so difficult for Slovaks to find a role model or be proud of some personality? Because the country is only 100 years old, right? This year, by the way, they're celebrating 100 years together with Czechs.
Yeah, but even like the country in itself is even less, right? So like the Czech Republic and Slovakia split effectively, right?
Yeah, but you know that there was a Slovak Republic even before, right? In 37, and so these historical things are good to know, because they just show you mistakes they did, which actually makes them think differently on some aspects of political life, right? So
even if in reality, at the end, the vast majority of people that are still born, right, just see part of this with their own skin, right, and all the rest is something that they just hear and read in the books, right?
Exactly.
But still is making their own, way how they behave, probably.
Oh, definitely. And if they start family, that's I tell you, I think it's probably the most efficient way. I call it family with the person from the country. It's like highway to the access to the culture and everything, right? Because especially if you have a child, you can start educating yourself together with the child almost, because from the first grade at school, you learn many things about Slovakia through the child, because you need to do homework and you need to see, to understand the content. So I actually enjoy it. Right now we're going through different sightseeing areas in Slovakia. They call it historical places. So many of them I didn't know before, but because now he's got a book from school and he's studying that in 4th grade, it's just opens my eyes as well to many different aspects. And from a linguistic language perspective, I learn now some words, like why they're written the way they're written. So it's because there is a rule behind, right? So it's fun, and it keeps me busy. It lets me experience again Slovakia from, I would say it even again, because even if you live, like as I said, 18 years in the country, and you speak the language fluently, but it's there are many things on all those areas which you learn
And how is your, even now it's funny to think, right, that you are actually Slovak, right? So not only Mongolian but also Slovak. So,
Yeah.
are you still, do you think, considered foreigner by some people that you meet in the, the
Definitely.
park or in the school?
Yeah, definitely.
And how is your relationship with in these kind of encounters and with Slovaks?
Yeah, I cannot blame them for that, right? I mean, if I meet you in Mongolia, first impression is like you are not in Mongolian, my friend. Yeah. So,
But I could be, actually.
But you could be, and you could speak fluently Mongolian, right? You could impress me with everything what you know. So, but still, your brain is not able to cope with this information that a European-looking person might be a citizen of an Asian country or whatever. The same thing is happening here. If people don't realize this, then it's absolutely okay. Some people feel it like easily understandable. In Bratislava, obviously, when you hear someone who looks different than Slovak, let's say from different race even, speaking Slovak, maybe they were born here, maybe their parents are from different part of the world, right? But they were raised and they lived here. They accept that idea, at least, that this can happen, right? This can happen, but whenever I go through this small village in Slovakia or whatever, so people look at me. Of course, they look, okay, he must be tourist. He must be a tourist, definitely. The only thing is missing is a camera. Probably forgot that in the hotel room, but actually, yeah.
Stick.
But if you just stop and then ask them for the way and the things in Slovak, they just, they're shocked. Many of them really, literally shocked. But that's how all those cultures meet, right?
But also, how many Mongolians do you know that are in Slovakia?
Oh yeah, that's a good point. There are only like around 30 Mongolians, which number is always varies because some of them leave, some of them are students, right? They are not very long time here. So we are few of them, but there are, let's say, 6 families that live in Mongolia, which I'm in connection with, and we have even our society.
So that said that if somebody like meets Billy in the street, it's probably like a miracle, right? It's like so remote of option to meet a Mongolian here. That's interesting.
Yeah. Many of them would say like the first encounter with Mongolians, probably their ancestors had in 13th century, right? When Mongolian hordes arrived to but to link this time into my behavior is very difficult then. Of course, they heard about Mongols, they know who Genghis Khan is, right?
Everybody knows who Genghis
usually
Khan
it is in the history books, but they understand that it's a different we're talking about different times.
Is it Genghis Khan or Genghis Khan?
It's Genghis Khan.
Genghis.
It's Chi, right?
Genghis Khan.
But somehow there are variations of the word, of the name. So Genghis, I heard Genghis, which is totally wrong. So the right pronunciation with Ch, right? So I know at least I have a topic to start from, right? I have a good. If they meet someone from another part of Asia, who they don't know, or who they don't know any person from that country, how do they? Yeah.
Yeah, but that was a time where basically, the Mongol Empire was, went till Europe, right? So there was a wide option. Did you think something remained from that time here as well, from the culture or from something you see around the language or?
No, because it was a very short time they actually stayed here, and it was not really like. Let me give you something as a present before I leave type of trip. Yeah. So it was a real occupational war exercise, right, at that time. So they came. They actually literally burned down some cities,
So it was not a
culture. It was not really
culture in.
It was not. It was not perceived that way. And historically, you see that many of them, but they don't know other aspects of what Mongolians actually created, because it was a almost like a free highway for Silk Road to start having the trade.
Yeah.
It became more intense because all the robbers on the road were eliminated, right? Because it was united. It was one kingdom, like one empire, one way of one rules, let's say, trading rules.
That's
many other things.
Definitely an interesting part of history. And let's try to debunk a myth, because many times when you start speaking Slovak with somebody that was born in Slovakia, they usually are surprised, like, rozprávate po slovensky, you know? And at one point you start talking about Slovenčina je ťažká. So from a linguist, is it really a hard language, or is it's nothing really so hard as I've seen every language have their own.
I've seen the article where Slovakia was in like top 10 of the difficult languages and so on. All kind of fake articles that you can imagine, because there are much more harder languages. And the reason why some other languages are harder is because you cannot even relate it to the language you already know. At least from the perspective, you are using the same letters as in Italian.
Yes.
So can you imagine that? Can you imagine just comparing this to Chinese characters, which has nothing in common with Latin letters, and has nothing. And even from a language perspective, like among Slavic countries, here is in a western part of Slavic countries, they use those Latin, and then they use Azbuka, or is it the Russian,
like
the Cyrillic, in other countries, right? So that already creates a huge difference. So Slovaks say it's very hard for them to write Russian. They will never learn that, or they say it's difficult. Although they used to speak and learn it at school many years ago. But now I can see that the younger generation, they would have problem to read anything in Russian. But when they hear Russian, they might pick up certain things which are similar to their language. So what is the difficulty? Is it how you read it? Is it how you speak it? Understanding the language? So if you're a total foreigner from an African country coming to Europe, there is no difference in difficulty between Italian and Slovak for that person, let's say, right? So I think it's subjective, like where the person is coming from. But within the Europe, I wouldn't consider Slovak as one of the hardest languages, whatever. Then you should actually tell that all Slavic languages are hard.
Yeah, but how can you define a hardness of a language?
Yeah, that's exactly the thing. Like
obviously, if you're born, in Poland, you might have less troubles in learning Slovak than if you're born in Italy, right?
Yeah,
because you have a basic.
That's why there is no common agreement, even among linguists, to say like what is the hardness, right? How to say this? Is it hard if just only few people speak the language because the rest of the world doesn't speak? Is it the indicator? Then, if it is an indicator, Chinese is the easiest language because majority of Earth population speaks Chinese, right? So it's not very easy to define the grammar. Well, it says Slovak has a difficult grammar, but then other languages have difficulties in vocabulary. Yeah. So you use same words for different things, right? So that's very subjective thing.
Okay.
Yeah. So if every language, it depends on the person who is learning. If you are a person who is into languages, any language is learnable. So you can learn without any problem. Right, but if you are someone who already struggled almost with own language and now is pushed to learn a new foreign language, any new foreign language will be a big challenge, definitely. So the willingness to learn a third, fourth language will just decrease, obviously.
Yeah. And then we see maybe perhaps also your kid is able to speak Mongolian and Slovak, right?
Yeah,
and there is no whatsoever difficult task for a bilingual mind.
For kids, it's a little bit complicated because also we shouldn't forget that the language develops rapidly, and you see the technology is developing. I don't have Mongolian doesn't have sometimes their own words for some technology things, so it's just taken in English, right? The motherboard is a motherboard probably, so we don't create a new word, which includes word mother.
How to say pizza in Mongolian?
Pizza, right? Pizza is also pizza, right? Because
so we have a common word.
Yeah.
In both languages.
Oh, okay. From that perspective, we have many common words from different countries. That's true. So it's influenced, right? It's influenced by other languages, especially by English now in Mongolia.
And do you miss something from Mongolia that you cannot find in these areas?
Yeah, I think one thing is just the fact that you have the relatives and family there, where you can be who you are with all those negatives and positives, right? In Slovakia, I don't have that. So if I meet the family of my wife, it's still like considered like it's not like your own family, your own parents. So you behave, so to say, right? You show the best part of you. Whenever I go to Mongolia, I can really be sometimes like, oh, okay, I think that there are some Mongolian elements in me that were not allowed to show in Slovakian environment. So I go to Mongolia and I feel like, and believe me, it's not about drinking or singing, definitely not. But things like just to complain or tell things like in Mongolian words. And not swearing. We don't have actually. Slovaks swear a lot. That's one of the things. And they swear. It's not always in negative things. They just like love to express things in some swearing words, which for them is easier to ventilate the emotions even internally. So I think that's the reason.
It's an emphasis function.
I think it's just a kind of psychological, therapeutical kind of element of speaking those magic words, as I say in Slovaks. So I do that as well. But yes, I miss like the close relatives, people who I spent my childhood with, who have a common experience. Common lineage, and this is not possible to replace by anything.
Any particular food or taste you?
From food perspective, actually, Mongolians are very simple. We don't have our cuisine is actually not really special. Yeah, I shouldn't be telling it. If some Mongolians hear me, they would probably object.
What is the top Mongolian dish?
But it's meat. Actually, it's meat in any forms, right?
Okay.
All different type of meats, and the taste of meat is amazing.
Okay.
But it's just meat mostly, and with noodles probably and rice. But otherwise, before noodle and rice existed, imagine in Mongolia, what does it? Yeah, no vegetables really. Not that much. Fruits you can forget almost because it doesn't grow. So
and milk, like I have this
milk
idea
products,
of tea with milk,
cheese and so on. That's okay. That was so meat with cheese, but it's seasonal, right? As well. You should not forget that it's cheese is not all around the year, right? You can have from traditionally. Now you can buy anything in a supermarket, of course, but the cuisine is so simple that anything I experienced